All right, I wanted to talk about a concept from the Enchiridion. If you listen to episode 44, I talk a little bit about this text. It's written about 2,000 years ago, somewhere around there. So there's a lot of different translations. I wasn't able to remember which one when I was talking last time. What I'm pulling this one from is one called the Good Life Handbook, if you want to check that out. If you have a Kindle, it's free right now for Kindle, but it's a cheap version of it. So the thing about the translations, real quick, is this. My understanding of the Good Life Handbook, it's not so much like a translation, but the author wanted to take the concepts and put it into a more modern language, make it easier to understand. I read another translation of this text. It was called How to Be Free. And the way it looks to me is the How to Be Free one is a little more of a translation of the text. So if you did want to get sort of an insight on kind of what they were talking about, that one might be good to read as well. It's not like a huge book. They're really short passages. So it's worthwhile to read both. But if you've never really looked into Stoicism, this Good Life Handbook might be a good place to start. So the concept that I wanted to talk about this is from chapter 4, and the idea is that before you go into a situation, you take some time to, meditate on the things that could go wrong and prepare yourself for those. I think we've all experienced where you go somewhere, you go to do something, and some things that are expected to happen that piss you off or put you in a bad mood, they still catch you off guard, like when you get cut off on the freeway. Like, how many times has that happened to all of us? But you still get surprised and pissed off by it. So this chapter is talking about if you take some time to prepare yourself before you enter that situation and reflect on the things that could go wrong, and then remember that you want to be calm and they say attuned to nature and things like that. So I am just going to give some examples here. So I'll talk about some graffiti examples. So let's say you wanted to go paint something, like if you're going to do a piece somewhere. One good practice would be to sort of prepare yourself that maybe the thing isn't going to come out the way you wanted it to, which is something that happens to most of us. I mean, except for maybe some super elite people that the shit in their head just ends up on the wall. But I would imagine a good portion of us experience it frequently, where you go to paint something and it doesn't necessarily come out the way you wanted. So the idea, if you wanted to use this Stoic concept, before you go to paint, you can just take a couple minutes and reflect on the idea that it might not come out the way you wanted, but that isn't the only reason you're going. You're going, to enjoy yourself. You're going to paint. So instead of being sort of irritated, I know I've had this happen where. And actually, most of the time that I paint, if I'm going to do a piece, I've told people this before, that pretty much all the way up until maybe I start adding details, I'm kind of not enjoying the process because I'm looking at this kind of what looks to me to be kind of a mess. And it's, it takes a while for it to start to form. And so I find that I don't really have a lot of fun painting until I start to see that it's going to turn out. It never really turns out exactly the way I expected it to, but until it turns out in a way that's acceptable to me. So one thing that I've been doing, and this is kind of a side thought, but sometimes I know that that's kind of how my brain works. So a lot of times I'll sketch my piece out, and then I'll pretty much bring one letter to completion. So maybe not completely complete, but at least like get everything filled in and do all the details and highlights. And sometimes I do bring it all the way to the finish. So I'll do the border and do all these kind of things. So at least that I can see that one letter, and I kind of know that the whole piece is going to come out the way I wanted, because I know that it has happened before where I'll be painting and I'll be going through that whole thing where I'm looking at it and I'm like, this isn't coming out the way I wanted. And then kind of expecting it to come together at the end. And then at the end, it doesn't really come together. And I just sort of leave disappointed, and so trying to avoid that stuff, if you sort of prepare yourself ahead of time that, hey, maybe this isn't going to come out the way you want it to, but there's other reasons why you're going to do that. And so I'll give a couple other examples. Like, if you're going to the grocery store, you could kind of prepare yourself ahead of time that maybe there's going to be a bunch of people there. And I had this pet peeve, and I guess I still have it, where like, the whole aisle will be empty, but there's like two people in the aisle and they just stop their carts in a way that you can't get by. And it's like, all you had to do was stagger your carts a little bit and then anybody else could pass through. I used to go to this Costco in LA, and this was probably whenever that movie Death Race was out. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but so I think it was like 2008 or somewhere around there. So like I was nowhere near working on personal development. Well, I mean, I guess I was barely starting to scratch the surface on that stuff. So I was overall a pretty angry person, and I used to go to this Costco, and I would get so mad. Like, it was the weirdest thing. There was so many people there that were just, I don't know, it just seems like the whole place was full of shitty people, like I remember on several occasions, I'd be sitting there looking at stuff and I'd feel a cart bump into me multiple times. And then I'd look over and there's this lady like just staring at me. It was like she was bumping me with her cart to get me to move. And, it was like, I don't know, I would just get so mad. I would have these sort of visions of like just tipping over their cart and then talking about that death race thing. It's so stupid. But one of the things that kind of helped me, and this is at the mindset that I was then, was I would sort of imagine my shopping cart was like one of those death race cars. And if you saw that movie, these cars have like flamethrowers and guns and shit. And I would just imagine like just plowing through all of this shit, pretty negative mindset. So not really the stoic type of vibe that we're going for in this conversation here. So what a better thing to do would be to prepare yourself and be like, look, people are going to be doing this and this and that, but not only do you need to go get groceries, but you also want to, what's the quote from the thing here? Not only do I need groceries, but I want to be calm and attuned to nature. Doing so would be impossible if I fell apart whenever something unexpected happened. So by preparing yourself ahead of time, you may not get caught off guard by things that are annoying. So another good example I thought of in the graffiti realm, let's say you go to a yard that has like a pretty high turnover. So meaning, it's those kind of yards that most stuff doesn't run for a very long time. There's like a lot of people coming in and out of there. There was the Venice art walls in Venice. It's kind of like, I used to tell people like, you don't go there with the expectation that your stuff is going to run. You go to that yard for the experience and the photograph. You kind of know sometimes there's people waiting to go over your shit as you're painting, So that's kind of like a unique spot, but there's other spots that aren't legal walls, but they're pretty active. So what I was thinking is if you wanted to put this practice into your life and try to use it, because I know a lot of people get pissed off when their stuff gets gone over. So if you took this philosophy or this concept from this text and say you went to one of those kinds of yards, and before you went, if you just sort of prepared yourself and said, this is a yard that it's pretty well known that people are going to go over you, and maybe some skater kids will pick up a scrap can and scribble on your piece or something like that. If you go into it with the expectation that might happen, and remember that you want to take those things in stride, then you're going to be less bothered by it in the end. You can also remind yourself that, the piece running for X amount of time or whatever your expectation is, that's not the only reason why you're painting. You're painting because, there's a number of reasons. You're painting because you enjoy doing it, you need the practice, or you want to like develop some skills. You want to hang out with some of your friends and paint together. You want to get a photo of the thing or a video. There's all kinds of other reasons why you're painting. So a lot of us tend to focus on like, oh, that shit's not going to run. But it's like, you're kind of leaving out all of the other shit, the other reasons why you're painting in the first place. So I just think it's very interesting that a concept from 2,000 years ago can be so applicable to a lot of the things that we do now. And like I said, if you caught episode 44, the Stoic philosophy, out of all the shit that I read, and I literally read every single day, a lot of times I also listen to audiobooks the same day. So I'm just constantly absorbing information. And honestly, the concepts that I learned from Stoicism have been some of the most, possibly the most helpful in terms of personal development, and they can be applied to all kinds of things. I'm not trying to pitch Stoicism to anyone, but it's worth looking into. So I think that's all I got. If you're finding this podcast helpful, I'd really appreciate sharing. I don't really do any advertising or anything like that, so it would be cool if you shared it. Outside of that, if you have any things you want to hear discussed on the show, feel free to email graffitimachine@gmail.com. I've been pretty bad about checking that email. I apologize if you had sent some stuff, over the last year or whatever amount of months. I'm trying to get better at that. You can also just direct message me on Instagram at bus166. We're also at Machine Studio, but we get a lot of DMs there, so it's more likely that I'll get back to you at bus166. All right, so I'm going to get out of here. Hope this concept helps. Give it a try. See if it works for you. All right.
Appreciate each and every one of you guys who are supporting the cause and continue to spread the love. And, stay up.